Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I'm talking to Erin Bury. She's the co-founder and CEO of Willful. So this is a death tech business. No, it's not a 1980s metal band. Death tech is something that I just heard the term for the first time just a couple of minutes ago, and I'm excited to have Erin explain to us what this is and what her business is all about. So welcome to the show, Erin. What is death tech?
Thanks so much, Lance. Excited to be here. Well, death tech is a crop of emerging companies like mine that are trying to change the way that Canadians prepare for and deal with death in a digital age. So, moving from very paper-based to offline processes and bringing components of planning for your own passing online, but also helping families bring that estate settlement process online to make it easier to wrap up someone's life.
Okay, so where do you fit into this whole industry around death tech then?
Yeah, so we're very firmly in pre-planning. So our customer is the Canadian who wants to get a will in place, get powers of attorney documents, and build out other plans that will help their family when they pass away and ensure that their voice is heard after they're gone.
Okay, and so how are you doing this then? Like, how are you revolutionizing this aspect?
Yeah, so think of it like the TurboTax for estate planning. So just like you would use TurboTax to file your taxes if you had a pretty simple situation versus maybe go to an accountant and spend, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, Willful's really trying to fill the gap for the millions of Canadians who have a pretty simple situation and don't want to shell out four figures to get these documents done with a lawyer. So we really take the approach of building out really solid legal templates with our legal partners across Canada. And then you as the customer are guided through a series of questions about your life. And we help you appoint key roles in your will and other documents like your executor or beneficiaries. We pull all of your answers into customized legal documents. And then we also help you build out other things like asset lists and funeral and burial wishes, all with the goal of having you as prepared as possible. So when you pass away, because unfortunately, Lance, it's a when, not an if, your family is so much better equipped and they're not scrambling. And I mean, we started the company, my husband and I, because his uncle passed away unexpectedly a few years ago. And we just saw how difficult it is when you're trying to grieve, but also trying to figure out, did Uncle Dave want to be buried or cremated? What kind of service did he want? What outfit did he want to be buried in? So our goal is to help Canadians record those wishes to save their families time and energy at a time when it's already pretty stressful and they should be focused on grieving.
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting model and one that obviously for our generation and people a little bit older potentially, it really would be something useful and easy for them to use. Now, the people who are approaching death, though, a lot of our parents and older aunts and uncles and so on, are you finding an adoption within that older demographic, or does it tend to be the children of those older parents who are actually implementing it?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we have customers from, 20 to 80, but I would say our core customer is someone like me. I'm 37, I'm a homeowner, I'm married, I have an infant daughter. I've gone through a few of those life moments that make me really care about what happens when I pass away. So 21-year-olds typically not sitting around thinking about estate planning. And like you said, a lot of older folks might just have a proclivity to working with a professional or doing things offline because they're not as comfortable with digital tools. We do find, though, that there are a lot of people that help their parents. So, for example, I sat with my dad. He created his will on Willful. I helped him navigate the platform and made sure that, he was recording his wishes the way that he wanted. So we're seeing a lot of that. Adult kids who are urging their parents to get these documents done and helping them to use the online platform. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to be my dad's executor. So I have a vested interest in making sure he's organized, because if not, I'm going to be the one that has to clean up the mess.
Yeah, and a big mess it will be, right?
Absolutely. I mean, being an executor is already a huge job. If you've been an executor and you're listening, then you know that. And if you've been appointed as executor, or you think that you might be the executor, it's really in your best interest to make sure that your parents or whoever you'd be this person for have wills, power of attorney documents. If they have life insurance, what types of assets they have, so you don't have to wait for mail to come in after they pass away. And even digital legacy, that's something that we're learning a lot about. When people pass away, they don't necessarily share their passwords with anyone. And it can take months to email all of these platforms like Facebook and Google and try to get access to people's accounts, because most of these software platforms don't have any mechanism for passing on an account.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you about that. So that is an area that also is covered off by Willful then, where it holds the passwords for some of these platforms that we'd be using in the digital world?
Yeah, so right now we have an asset list tool that allows you to build out a list of your assets and liabilities, and that could include digital assets like cryptocurrency. But we're not trying to be a password manager. We always direct people to folks like 1Password, which is a really great Canadian company. I use it daily, so I don't have to remember 72 passwords. And that's a really great option. For example, I have a vault that's shared with my husband. And he knows how to access that vault, so that if I were to pass away or something was to happen, he'd be able to get into all of my accounts. And so that's something that you can do. It's pretty affordable, a few bucks a month to subscribe to something like 1Password to store all of your accounts, because otherwise, he may not even know that I have, $100 in a Wealthsimple account. He might not even know to look there.
Yeah, exactly. That things get scattered around, and it even becomes more complicated, I think, for entrepreneurs too, when you're talking about estate planning, because there are all of the nuances of what's going on within that business. So our audience, our entrepreneurs, is Willful an ideal tool for them as well, or is it, just a little too simplified for what an entrepreneur might need?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is it depends. Willful can accommodate business owners. We have what's called a carry-on business clause, which gives your executor the power to act on your behalf related to your business interests. So they could wind down a business, sell it, etc. And you can pass on your shares in any business in a willful will or in any other will. So for example, I could leave my willful shares to my husband or to my parents. But you should always check if you have a shareholders agreement that says otherwise, because often shareholders agreements will deal specifically with what happens with one of the shareholder shares if they pass away. And you may also want to create what's called a dual will, which separates your business assets for probate purposes. So for example, if I were to pass away and I only had one will, my willful business interests would be subject to probate fees in Ontario, which are about 1% of my estate. So if you just have a consulting business and you don't hold a lot of cash in it, that might not matter to you. But for someone who's running a business that's worth, millions and millions of dollars, they might want to save that 1% by creating a second will that doesn't have to go through probate. So I won't get too into the details, but the short answer is you can use willful, but you might want to speak with a professional, especially a tax advisor, on how to reduce fees on your business interests at the time of your passing.
Yeah, sound advice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your business. Now, Willful was started, you said, out of a need that you were experienced when you were the executor of your uncle's will, I think you said. So in that case, that was what, a couple of years ago? How old is the company?
Yeah, so Kevin's uncle passed away in 2015. His aunt was the executor, but she really tasked Kevin with tracking down a lot of these things, going to his
Yeah.
work and asking his coworkers, did he ever talk to you about cremation on one of your lunch breaks? And so that was kind of the first spark of inspiration. About a year later, Kevin was hospitalized with septic arthritis for about a week. And he was laying in his hospital bed after I would leave visiting hours. And he thought to himself, if I were to pass away, I would be leaving Erin with an even worse mess, because his uncle had a will, Kevin didn't, even though we were homeowners at the time. So that was kind of the final push that he needed to look into this and to get our own estate plans in order. And that's when we realized there was nothing that spoke to us as digital natives, as people in our early 30s at the time. We didn't want to go to a lawyer. We just want to avoid going to lawyers whenever possible because of the cost, but also because we didn't want to make appointments at 11 a.m. and take time off work and physically go to a location, because this was pre-COVID. So when we looked into it, we just found there wasn't that kind of Wealthsimple style, TurboTax style offering that spoke to us. And that's when we decided to launch it ourselves.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so I also understand that you were on Dragon's Den about a year ago or so.
Yeah, so we've been around for about 5 years. We launched the platform in October of 2017 in Ontario. We've since expanded to 8 provinces. We've experienced really strong growth, especially through COVID, because obviously it reminded everybody to get your emergency plans in
Yeah.
place. And yeah, a big highlight from the last 5 years was recording Dragon's Den. So we recorded it in June of 2021 when I was about 4 months pregnant with our daughter, and it aired 3 weeks after she was born. So that was pretty cool to have her at the viewing party, although she definitely won't remember it. And we're actually on this upcoming season. They're doing a kind of Where Are They Now that showcases our progress in the last year, because we've gone fully remote since COVID hit. We just launched a partnership nationally with CIBC Bank. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, it'll be a fun chance to look at all the progress we've made.
Okay, so this isn't a spoiler, obviously, because it was a year ago that the episode aired, and you did end up securing a deal then with one of the dragons, correct?
We did, yeah. We did a deal with Michelle Romano, which was the perfect fit for us because she's known as kind of the tech e-commerce dragon. And we had actually been customers of her company, Clearco, which provides financing to kind of software and e-commerce businesses back in the day. So it was nice to kind of actually get to pitch to the person who founded a company that we used. And yeah, she's been super helpful. I mean, she's helped with some digital ad campaigns and some marketing advice. And so it's been really nice to have her amongst our group of investors.
So tell me about that experience about being, on the show or prepping for the show, being on the show, and then post show, you have the deal on TV. Oftentimes that's not the same deal as what ends up actually getting executed afterwards. So share with us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I have so many entrepreneurs reaching out asking for tips on Dragon's Den, and my first tip is just apply. I didn't know anyone there. I just went on the website and filled out an application, and that's really the first step. I did wait though until I thought Willful had the growth and metrics that I knew I could stand behind on the show. I didn't apply year 2 because I didn't want to get on the show and have them call me out for, everyone's seen when you say your valuation is X and they're like, but your numbers don't match that. And I think the key for us that helped us to be successful was preparation. I'm a professional public speaker. I've done a ton of, presenting at pitch competitions, and the key is preparation. I practiced Dragon's Den so much. I can't even tell I could probably have recited the pitch in my sleep, and
Yeah.
also practiced, 20 to 30 questions I knew would be asked because I watched 3 prior seasons and made notes. And so that's my biggest tip to any entrepreneur who wants to go on the show or who's pitching at a startup pitch day or anything like that is over prepare, because we actually weren't nervous walking into the den because we knew our stuff. And in terms of the deal, I mean, listen, you either go on Dragon's Den because you want the exposure or because you actually need the money. For us, it was a little bit of both. We were open. We knew we were going to be raising money. So we were very open to taking a deal, although we didn't want to take a very sharky deal. And of course, we knew that it was great exposure. So after the show filmed, the dragon that you did a deal with is put directly in touch with you, and you don't really deal with the CBC team. You deal directly with them on the terms of that deal. So we went through some diligence with Clearco, Michelle's company, and ended up having her as a part of a larger fundraising round. So it wasn't the same terms as the deal on TV, but a lot of deals fall through. So I'm glad to say that ours didn't.
Yeah. And so how much of an advantage do you think that you have received by having her part of that deal, that funding deal? Was it something that allowed you to secure additional funding because of that name recognition and your exposure on the Dragon's Den, or was it somewhat inconsequential at the end of the day?
I mean, I think it definitely helps to have a name like Michelle's, especially because, we're going to be raising additional funding in future. And so being able to say that she's one of our investors when she's very high profile is definitely helpful. But I'd say the big asset that she's been to us is definitely through marketing and advertising. So being able to use her testimonials and use footage from the show to kind of highlight to the average Canadian who probably watches Dragon's Den, hey, Michelle thinks you need a will, so you should get one via Willful. So that's been the biggest help.
Yeah. And so how much consulting do you get or in that way from her? Then I know some of the deals when they're getting put together, the dragons, when they're competing against each other for the deal, they're often, really talking about what they can bring to it beyond just the money. Did you experience that in this case as well?
Yeah, I mean, every time I watch Shark Tank, I always laugh when people like Mark Cuban are saying, "Oh, I'm just going to sit right beside you and grow this business." No, they're not. These
No.
people are billionaires. They have dozens of portfolio companies, they have other business interests. So if you're going into any investment relationship expecting that they're going to be like a full-time staff member beside you, then you really need to reset your expectations.
Yeah.
The investors that are going to spend the most time with you are the ones that are leading your funding rounds or the ones that are sitting on your board of directors. Otherwise, most investors are going to be pretty hands off. And that's the way you actually want it. You don't want them continually asking you questions and trying to stick their nose into the day to day of the business, but you do want them to be there and available when you have questions. So we're grateful to have a diverse mix of investors who we can turn to. I'm speaking with one of them on Friday about a product issue. I've definitely tapped into Michelle for marketing advice, but I've used that the asks sparingly, right? I only have so many times that I can reach out to them and say, hey, can you jump on a call and help me? So I save it for when I really need it because I know they're just so busy.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like a little bit of a whirlwind, right? So a few years you've been in business and you're seeing all the success. You're right across Canada now. You've built a team. And what are, in your opinion, some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way? So what has surprised you and what maybe wasn't a surprise where you're like, nope, I totally was anticipating this. It's just one of those things that I had to go through because, it's a growth of a business.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think the biggest non-surprise was how difficult it is to raise capital. I think that's a blanket statement for anybody starting a business, but definitely being a female founder, fewer VC dollars go to underrepresented founders. So
Mm.
um, it's really also this kind of 0 to a million phase that's the hardest. So when you're first starting out, I mean, we had to run our business on our personal credit cards for at least 2 years
Yeah.
because nobody would give us a credit card that wasn't personally guaranteed. And at a time when we were in our early 30s and already taking a risk by launching a business, we didn't want to risk our personal financial situation by personally guaranteeing lines of credits and credit cards, right? We really wanted to keep those things separate, but it's pretty much impossible to do that. You have to get creative. And so for us, we tapped into things like clear co-financing. We did raise a small friends and family funding round to just hire a developer to get the platform built. None of our family are extremely wealthy, so that was, $5,000 checks from, anyone who would hear our pitch. But there's a real gap there. And if you don't have friends and family that can write you a check, and if you're not at a stage where someone like Clearco will give you funding, your only options are really self-funding, which isn't an option for everyone. It wasn't for us. Or personally guaranteeing credit cards, lines of credits. And then if the business doesn't work out, your financial situation personally is on the hook. So I think that's the biggest challenge. But as you grow your business, it doesn't get any easier, right? We still have a charge card that we have to pay off in full every month because no bank will give us a credit card that isn't tied to our personal finances, even though we're doing 7 figures in revenue. And raising venture capital funding is very difficult in general. I mean, you've seen Dragon's Den, you're expecting 9 no's and 1 yes if you're lucky, but usually it's more like 90 no's and 1 yes. So that can be very defeating. Basically raising venture capital is being told that your business sucks over and over and over, and just you have to maintain that confidence and almost that bravado and arrogance that no, my business is great, I know it better than you do, this is a huge opportunity and you're going to miss out if you don't get in on the ground floor. But it definitely is a hit to your ego.
Yeah, yeah. Talk to me a little bit about cap tables and term sheets then, because I think these are things that a lot of people don't understand and maybe haven't even heard the terms before. So walk me through your thoughts on that in your business and how you needed to really develop an understanding there.
Yeah, I mean, when people ask me, what do you wish you knew starting out? What would you do differently with your next business? I feel like they always want to hear like sexy, fun things like, I would have done this marketing thing differently, or I would have hired this person, but mine are all super boring. Hire a really good lawyer from the beginning. Don't use that friend of a friend who charges you a third of the cost. Go to a legitimate law firm that specializes in working with small businesses. It's worth the money up front because you're going to have to pay to fix it later. We did. Second is understand, especially if you're taking outside capital, how your cap table works. So if you're bootstrapping your business, if you're self-funding it and you never plan to give away any of your pie of equity, right? You own 100% of your company if you start a business. If you have partners, maybe you own a half or a third. But if you never take funding, if you never give any of that equity to employees or advisors or contractors, then you don't really have to worry about it because it's always going to remain pretty simple. But if you're a business like mine who is taking outside capital, I have an employee stock option pool, I have an advisory board and a board of directors who receive equity in the business, then you have a capitalization table, which is a simple Excel sheet that outlines who is a shareholder of the business, how many shares they own, and how that is diluted as you grow the business. And I definitely didn't understand the impact on your cap table as every time you take a check from someone. So every single time, if I own 100% of the business and I sell you, the business is worth $100 and I sell you 20% for $20, that cap table now shows I own 80%, you own 20%. And the next time we bring someone in, it's going to change all of those ratios and it's going to lower my percentage of ownership. And the average that a founder owns when they sell their business for any VC backed business is 7%. So
Sorry, 7, did you say?
7. Yes,
wow.
7. So you think about, being strategic early on, you can kind of map out how much money you're going to take over time and how that's going to dilute you. And it becomes a really easy way to map out the progress of your fundraising so that you're not left with only 7% at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's alarming. I would never have guessed that it would be that low, but that a 7% average. So we're talking a lot of entrepreneurs be well underneath the 7% then. So that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And the other thing that you mentioned, the term sheet. So a term sheet is a document that's given to you by an investor that essentially says, hey, I want to invest in you. So a term sheet might say, I want to give you $20 for 20% of your business, but it also outlines a bunch of other terms, hence term sheet. And a lot of those are related to control. So Lance, you might say, well, I'm going to give you that $20, but I want a board seat on your board of directors. And I also want preferred shares so that if the company sells for less than it's worth now, I get my money back first. So there are all of these terms that go into a term sheet. And there's a really great book called Venture Deals by Brad Feld that outlines all of the various types of capital you can raise and the structures of those, as well as how to read a term sheet and a guide to kind of the various terms. And I literally had that book open in front of me while I was negotiating the term sheet with our seed round investor Tactico. So highly recommend if you are planning on raising funding, read that book and it'll save you a lot of time and energy.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the things is as entrepreneurs, when we're building our businesses, we don't have the expertise in this stuff. And so we don't think through how to structure any of those terms. we are often, when we're dealing with other people who are investing in, almost at their mercy a little bit because we are so unknowledgeable about it. So I love the fact that you're saying, read this book, get knowledgeable before you start to enter into those negotiations, because there are so many things that you could potentially be signing away that you didn't necessarily have to, right? And so there's a lot of things you need to do to protect yourself, your investment, your business.
100%. I mean, the perfect example of this is if anyone's seen The Social Network with, about the rise of Facebook. In the
Yeah.
movie, Eduardo Saverin and in real life, gets screwed over because Mark Zuckerberg issues millions of new shares and dilutes his shares down to be pretty much worthless. And those are the types of things that you can do if you don't have protections against that in your shareholders agreement or the term sheet, and the terms that the investor is coming in at. So
Yeah.
this great watch on what not to do if you're a founder.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, the growth that you've experienced over the last few years has been quite profound, right? You said the market was just, ideal in terms of COVID, had people thinking about this, and you received some of the funding, and so you were able to expand. What is, I guess, the keys to your growth over the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, a big focus for us is education. Estate
Okay.
planning is not something Canadians talk about at the dinner table. It's not something I learned about growing up. And
Yeah.
unless you've had a family member pass away and you've either been an executor or been a part of that, you probably haven't prioritized it. Or you might have created a will years ago, but it's been gathering dust in a filing cabinet. So I think for us, the big focus is education. How can we create content, educate people through podcasts like this, and just raise the awareness around not
Mm.
only the importance of this stuff, but the nuances of how to actually get it done. And I think for us, distribution is key. So for any small business owner, you know that you don't have a Super Bowl ad sized marketing budget. And so how do you actually reach people in your target audience efficiently without spending a ton of money? And for us, that's been partnerships. So partnering with CIBC Bank and Allstate Insurance and Arbor Memorial Funeral Homes and a whole bunch of other companies has allowed us to provide kind of education and willful offers to people who are already in that life stage where they would care about it. So that's been really key to our growth so far, and something that we're really going to be focused on in the next few years.
Yeah, I love the approach on partnerships, because you can really, really leverage the power of a bigger brand, to exponentially reach so many more people than what you ever could with your own resources, especially as a startup. And so I'm curious, with CIBC, that's the biggest name out of that group that you had there that everybody's going to recognize and have probably brushed up against. How did you get that deal? How did you approach that partnership?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I have to say we're quite fortunate in that we don't have a lot of competition, right? Because death tech and online wills are so nascent, there isn't a Rocket Lawyer or a Legal Zoom like there is in the US. There isn't a major player. And so when companies think about estate planning, they often stumble upon us. So we've actually had a lot of inbound outreach over the years from folks like Allstate and CIBC. I'm not actually 100% sure on exactly how the CIBC opportunity came about. Our partnerships team would know better, but I know that, it was a conversation about complementary value, right? If you're a CIBC customer, you're spending your entire life trying to grow your assets, and yet a lot of people haven't prioritized what happens to those assets when I pass away. How do I pass them on efficiently? So CIBC really sees this as complementary in value, to make sure that people have a more fulsome financial plan. And that's why they really wanted an estate planning partner.
Yeah, the fit makes a ton of sense. I think that it's a brilliant partnership to do that with the banks, for sure. And I'm curious, like you went to more of and again, maybe this is more of a question for your partners team, but you went to a more traditional bank as opposed to some of the fintech companies that are popping up out there that are much more aligned with a similar philosophy to what you are, or that you have. And so I'm just curious if that was intentional to go with an old trusted bricks and mortar, or if this is going to be part of a larger growth strategy to go in and partner with some of these other companies that are very similar to your model, in the sense where you're really trying to create a little bit of an upheaval in a traditional marketplace.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think part of the value of a partnership is obviously the brand trust, and people trust CIBC, right? Who do you trust more than the big banks in Canada, right? So
Yeah.
we were thrilled, not just because of the brand reputation and how people feel about CIBC, but just because of their breadth of offerings and their breadth of customer base across Canada, which is something that you don't get with a lot of smaller companies, right? They might be more nimble, more digital focused in some areas, but they're small and they also have small teams. So we found that with folks like CIBC and Allstate, they have teams that are dedicated to these types of partnerships and they can devote resources. Whereas with smaller companies, I mean, our partnerships team is very small. It's the same at a lot of other digital first companies. So we're very open to partnering with anyone who sees the value in estate planning and who has an audience that might benefit from it. But for us, it's been, it's kind of surreal. My husband, Kevin, his background is in trades. So he's not a coder. He didn't have a Harvard MBA getting into this. And the CEO of CIBC was on their earnings call last quarter and highlighted Willful on the first slide of his deck as one of the highlights from their performance in the quarter. And that was just wild, right? So why the big banks? Well, because it's kind of the dream of any startup owner to partner with a Fortune 100 company and to see your logo next to theirs. And so it's been really fulfilling.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Now, you've talked exclusively about the Canadian marketplace. I'm just curious if you have any plans to expand beyond Canada, and if so, what do you think are going to be some of the challenges there?
Great question. Yeah, it's funny. There's this club of people who are doing similar things around the world, from Dave at Wild in Australia to Dan at Fairwill in the UK to Cody at Trust and Will in the US. So we're proud to be partnered with Trust and Will. They're an amazing company based out of San Diego that does similar things to us in the US. And right now we're focused on the Canadian market. I mean, never say never, but for us, there's already really strong players in the US who are doing a great job. We see them more as partners versus competitors. And our plan is really to grow our product suite here at home. So we already know that 57% of Canadians don't have a will. There's millions and millions of people who could use Willful just for that core product. But our focus is building out the product suite so that if you need, insurance, if you need funeral and burial pre-planning, if you need any other aspect of end-of-life planning, you'll come to Willful, and either we'll provide that product or we'll partner with someone who can fulfill it for you.
Yeah, excellent. Well, if anybody wanted to connect with you to either explore a partnership or just to start their process and having a digital will, what's the best way of reaching out to you and your company?
Yeah, so you can find Willful at willful.co, willful.co. I'm at Erin Bury on every single platform, very active on Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. And my email is erin@willful.co.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today to explain to us a little bit about Death Tech and your company and all the exciting things that are happening over there.
Thank you so much, Lance. Thanks for shining a spotlight on entrepreneurs, and appreciate you having me on the show.
Most definitely. And for those who are watching and listening today, if you enjoyed this episode, head over to our archives at amplifyyourbusiness.ca. And of course, you can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcasting platform. Until next time, everybody have a wonderful, prosperous day.